Every morning for 28 years, an elderly woman in suburban Tokyo has placed a meal outside a closed door. She doesn't knock. She doesn't speak. She leaves the food and walks away. Her son is 53 years old. She has not seen his face since 1997. They are called Hikikomori. The word is Japanese, and it has no clean translation. The closest is something like pulling inward. The government's working definition is this: housebound for 6 months or more, with almost no contact with people outside the immediate household. Not reduced contact, not working from home. Complete withdrawal, sometimes for years, sometimes for decades, with one room as the entire world. The assumption, if you have heard of Hikikomori before, is that this is a young person's problem. Teenagers who refuse to go to school. Young men in their 20s who will not leave the apartment. A phase, perhaps. Something Japan will eventually grow out of. In 2019, the Japanese government conducted a survey specifically to count how many hikikomori, how many people in profound social withdrawal, there were in the age range of 40 to 64. They found 613,000. When combined with earlier surveys covering younger age groups, the total exceeds 1 million people. Of the middle-aged group, 36% are in their 50s. Just under 30% have not left their homes in more than 10 years. The parents of most of the people found in the 2019 survey are in their 80s. In Japanese social policy, this is known as the 80-50 problem. The name derived from the ages of the parent and the child. When the parent dies, there is no one left to place food outside the door. The generation of people who make up the largest cohort of hikikomori did not withdraw because they were broken. Most of them had done, by every measure that existed at the time, exactly what was expected of them. What broke was not them. What broke was the system they had been prepared to enter. And the moment it broke was a single spring month in the early 1990s. That is where this story starts. In the late 1980s, Japan's economy was producing a particular kind of certainty. The Nikkei index, Japan's primary stock market benchmark, reached its all-time high in December 1989. Land values in central Tokyo had risen to figures that made comparison to other cities essentially meaningless. Companies were hiring. Salaries were rising. The social contract between a Japanese corporation and its employees was among the most specific in the industrialized world. Join after university, remain for your career, receive promotions based on seniority, retire with a pension. The arrangement was not flexible, but flexibility was not what it was offering. It was offering permanence. The mechanism through which this permanence was accessed was the shinsotsu system, a Japanese term meaning the simultaneous recruiting of new graduates. Every year, in approximately the same weeks and approximately the same months, Japan's major companies would open their recruitment processes to students in their final year of university. Students would attend information sessions, sit through interviews, complete company-specific aptitude tests, and if selected, receive a naitei, an informal job offer that was extended before graduation was officially complete. In April, the students would graduate. Also in April, they would begin work. All of them, across all the companies that had hired that year, on the same day. The country's corporate workforce renewed itself annually in a single synchronized wave. The system was built on one assumption, that the economy would continue to absorb the graduates each April produced. For decades, it had. The students who passed through it in the 1970s and 80s emerged into companies that had planned for them, that had designed internal training programs specifically to absorb people with no professional experience and produce employees for life. The shinsotsu wave broke reliably on a shore that was always waiting. What nobody had built into the system was any procedure for what happened when the shore disappeared. In the summer of 1990, Japan's asset bubble began to collapse. It would take several years for the full consequences to work through the economy. But by 1993, the labor market for new graduates had changed in ways that were visible and, for the people experiencing them, largely impossible to plan around. Companies that had extended naitei, the informal pre-graduation job commitments, began withdrawing them. Others simply stopped hiring. The shinsotsu wave of April 1993 broke on a labor market that had contracted without warning. and without any mechanism to cushion the impact on the people who arrived at it that year. The period that followed is documented in Japan as the Shishoku Hyogaki Seidai, which translates as the employment ice age generation. The people it refers to are those who graduated between approximately 1993 and 2004, now in their late 30s to mid-50s. What defined this cohort was not that they failed to find work in the conventional sense. Many of them found work. What they failed to find was regular work. The Shinsotsu system had been designed around a single entry point. If you passed through it at the right moment, the path unfolded. If the door was closed when you arrived, there was no other door. Japan's labor market in the 1990s offered part-time and irregular employment to those who had missed the regular employment wave. These positions paid less, offered no career progression, and carried none of the social status of regular employment. A person hired as a regular employee in April could expect 40 years of structured career development. A person hired as a part-time worker in the same month had no equivalent path. The difference was not incremental, it was structural. What the research of psychiatrist Tamaki Saito, a professor at the University of Tsukuba who began studying Hikikomori in the 1990s, found was that withdrawal rarely begins with a refusal. It begins with a retreat after a specific failure, followed by an inability to return. The failure does not have to be large: a rejected job application, a first day at a new company that went badly, an interview where something small went wrong. The retreat is an afternoon, then a day, then a week. Each day that passes outside the room becomes, in the person's internal accounting, a debt growing faster than they can repay it. What made the Ice Age generation particularly vulnerable to this pattern is what happened when they looked for the path back in. The Shinsotsu system ran once a year and was not designed to accommodate people who had already graduated. A worker who spent 6 months in irregular employment, attempted to re-enter the regular labor market, and failed, had no second appointment with the system that had originally passed them by. The Shinsotsu door that had been closed in April 1993 remained closed. For the families, silence became a decision made under pressure. In Japan, the failure of a child to achieve stable employment was not understood primarily as a structural problem or an economic accident. It was understood as a family matter, which meant it was understood as a source of shame. Parents who might otherwise have sought help for a child who had stopped leaving the house frequently did not, because seeking help would have required explaining why, which would have required acknowledging what was happening, which would have required disclosing something the family had decided no one outside the household needed to know. The Shinsotsu wave that passed the Ice Age generation by became, in this way, not the beginning of a visible crisis, but the beginning of a disappearance. The rooms described in accounts of middle-aged Hikikomori share a specific quality. They are not disordered in the way of neglect. They are ordered in the way of permanence, arranged by someone who has, over years, created a functional life within a space that most people would treat as temporary. What is unusual is not the current state of the rooms, but their relationship to time. The objects in many of them date from the year of a Shinsotsu that did not come, or from the season when the attempt at re-entry failed. The posters, the books, the items arranged on shelves reflect a moment when the person stopped receiving new information from the outside world. The room holds the year the door closed, and little has been added since. Tamaki Saito's research documented the daily routines of Hikikomori, the schedules that form inside withdrawal, the cycles of sleep and waking that gradually decouple from external time, the hours that expand and contract according to no outside schedule. The person inside is not idle. They read, they watch, they follow the world through screens. What they do not do is participate in the transactions the outside world uses to register the existence of a person: employment, social contact, presence in a shared physical space. More than 40% of Hikikomori families surveyed in 2019 had not sought any outside help. A separate analysis suggested that, because of the stigma involved, Actual numbers may be considerably higher than official surveys capture. The people who were not counted are the ones whose families decided, as Japanese families had decided for years, that this was not something you said out loud. The 80-50 problem is what the arrangement looks like when time runs out. A parent in their 80s providing for an adult child in their 50s is not, in itself, an unusual household configuration. What is unusual is the specific nature of the dependency and the question of what follows it. When the parent dies, the child does not inherit a network of support. They inherit a room in which they have been the only permanent occupant for 30 years, and a world outside the door that has been running without them for just as long. The Japanese term for what sometimes follows is kodokushi, meaning lonely death. It is dying alone, undiscovered, sometimes for weeks or months, before anyone enters the space. It is most commonly associated with elderly people who outlived their social connections. The through line from the Ice Age generation to the 80-50 problem to kodokushi is not a coincidence. It is the same generation moving through time. There is a category of person who took the same impulse one step further. Johhatsu is a Japanese word that translates literally as evaporation. It refers to people who choose to disappear from their own lives entirely. Not to die, not to vanish in a crisis. To deliberately cut every connection, abandon every obligation, leave no forwarding address, and begin again somewhere else under no name that anyone from their previous life would recognize. Estimates put the number of Johhatsu at roughly 80,000 to 100,000 people per year in Japan. The figure is almost certainly an undercount, because many cases are never reported and because the definition excludes disappearances that are later resolved. A person who leaves a part-time job without notice, fails to pay their last month of rent, and boards a night train to a city where they know no one is, in the official record, simply absent. There are services built around this departure. They are called yonige-yae, meaning night-moving companies. Businesses that specialize in helping clients leave their current lives without being traced. The operation runs in the middle of the night. Belongings are moved before dawn. The apartment is left as it was found. There is no forwarding address because the point of the service is that there should not be one. Hikikomori and Johhatsu are different responses to the same social pressure. The Hikikomori closed the door and stayed. The Johhatsu left through it and did not come back. What both share is a conclusion, reached under conditions that the Japanese labor market and the culture surrounding failure helped create, that participation in the outside world was no longer possible in the form the world required. One group stopped moving. The other moved and did not stop. Neither appears in the statistics that describe Japan's economy. Neither registers in the unemployment numbers, the labor force participation surveys, or the social spending calculations governments use to understand who their citizens are. The Ice Age generation is, in the official record of Japan's social welfare system, mostly invisible. The 2019 survey was the first time the government looked at middle-aged adults and asked directly. It found more than it was prepared for. The Shinsotsu system still runs every spring. In October, the information sessions begin. In March, the Nitai are extended. In April, the new graduates start work. The wave breaks on exactly the schedule it has always used. The reforms Japanese policymakers have discussed over the past decade, mid-career hiring pathways, reduced emphasis on new graduate recruitment, recognition of irregular employment as a legitimate starting point, have made progress slowly. For the Ice Age generation, the window for those reforms to matter has largely closed. They are in their 40s and 50s now. The Shinsotsu system did not pass them by because it was designed to exclude them. It passed them by because it was not designed for the year it met them. There are a little over 1 million of them, by the most recent estimates. The number will not decrease on its own. The parents who are currently maintaining the arrangement from outside are aging. The 80-50 problem will, in another decade, be a 90-60 problem. The rooms will not empty because the people inside chose to leave. They will empty when the last person placing food outside the door is gone. Somewhere in a suburb of Tokyo tonight, there is an apartment that has had the same occupant since 1997. He is in his 50s. He was 23 when the shinsotsu wave he had prepared for did not come. His mother is in her 80s. She places food outside the door. She has placed food outside the door for 28 years. She does not discuss it with the neighbor she passes in the hallway. The neighbor does not ask. Outside, the city continues. The trains run on time. In April, new graduates will join their companies on the same morning they always have, wearing the same suits, entering the same lobbies. The door has not opened today. Commemorating the Korean labor force was placed in 1995 by Korean-Japanese community organizations.